we like is we like to record this. Recording has started. Hey, Justin.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi,
Great.
Justin.
How you doing, Rishabh?
Okay, so Rishabh, we're past our
Yeah.
start time. So if you want to
Yes.
share your screen and we use the screen to work through the agenda, I
Hmm.
see you've assembled an agenda for us. Let's talk through it.
Okay, I'll share my screen. You would have to enable screen
Oh,
share.
oh, right. Once again, my same mistake as always. Hang on just a minute. What we have to do here is we change where is it? There's something, security, allow participants to share screen. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Yes. So, okay. So one of the first things I was thinking to discuss was to have a consolidated plan since June 1 is starting. I think we should convert our action items into Jira tickets if that is the way to consolidate them. And I have a process in mind and I would like to discuss that. So for JMH, so the benchmarking strategy, I discussed this in a meeting, in this SIG platform meeting, and I want to know if this is what we would like to do for benchmarking. The first step, selecting a Git operation. Second, to test them with JMH, and third, to test them in the Jenkins CI. I think I have this first two steps for Git fetch. I've already have something in place. I have a work in progress PR for that. The third step, I actually am figuring it out with Mark. We were having a discussion on Git submodule. I would like to discuss that after this. So after doing this, then comes the implementation part. So for implementation part, I had some coding tasks in my mind and I wrote them. So the first is a PR on the JMH module with running on the Jenkins CI. So right now, I don't have a way to access the local repositories I want to fetch on CI, on the infrastructure. So that is something I'm figuring out right now. So after I have that, I think I should have a PR where I have a benchmark written for Git fetch, and it should run on our infrastructure on different environments so that we have a good solid data to work upon. Then one more possible coding task we could have is for the double fetch performance issue the existing issue we have. I have a PR for that. I think we need to discuss how to move forward on that. Do we need more automated tests? Do we need testing? Uh, so that's something we could discuss. And then I already have a micro benchmark test on Git fetch. I'm not sure how do we move from should we parallelly work on different operations, or should we first choose an operation and then work on its implementation, see that it's working or not, and then move on? That's something I also we should clear before moving on. And then implementing the opt-in performance feature I was thinking about. Once we have the data, we know that for this circumstance, for this scenario, JKit works better than Git. How I was thinking to implement it, I should have a PR at least on for Git fetch, how I want to do that. Maybe in the Git SCM checkout step, I could do it and raise a PR for that. And the last is we also were thinking to, I think it's an active discussion on replacing Git init plus fetch step in the Git SCM checkout with Git clone. And for that, we need a lot of changes. And that's something I haven't researched a lot, but it's it's one of the optional deliverables I had in my proposal. So I was also thinking to move it to not from optional to a mandatory deliverable. I think it would not stretch our timelines too much. That's something we can definitely discuss, because I need some coding tasks to work from June, because I think right now it's more of a loose research based approach, and I think it should be consolidated a bit, maybe on Jira or in any sense, in any way, maybe on this document in any sense. So that's the first thing I was thinking of discussion. Any questions you guys have?
So let's for me at least, I'd like to go from the very top.
Yeah.
I like number one a lot. I think having something that runs JMH on ci.jenkins.io will teach you and the rest of us a bunch of things about running that, because it will, whereas you've got Mac OS right now, it will immediately put us into a Windows and a Linux environment, even if we do nothing else. If all you do is execute on Windows and Linux, there will be things we learn from that experience that are crucial to the next step. So I'm very much yes for number one. That for me is really good.
Okay.
And number two is so high value that absolutely number two, because anything we can do to, and that is one of those where it's such a glaring performance problem on large repositories that's instantaneous savings if we can prove it works.
Yeah, so I have that PR, so I think we should work upon how to test it maybe, or if that solution is good or not. Yeah, so you were saying, I'm sorry.
No, I think you said it exactly right. It is the crucial question is what steps are needed in order to accept PR 845 into the plugin and release it to users, because it's that is so valuable and such a help for large repositories. It doesn't do serious harm to stop fetching twice for small repositories, but it's a major win for large ones.
Large ones, yes. So what maybe we could do is create maybe a ticket on this and then discuss possible test scenarios. Where should we discuss this? What would be a good platform to?
Yeah, so
I don't know. Or
there
maybe on
actually
GitHub
is a Jira ticket for that exact problem. Konstantin Schatzo had so Kostya Shah had submitted the ticket, and so we could either do the discussion in that Jira ticket, or we could do the discussion in the pull request. Either is fine with me. I'm open. Justin and Fran, do you have a preference?
No, I think both of those sound good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then my personal bias is let's discuss them in the PR, because it keeps the conversation directly in the code. I don't know that Kostya is at the moment interested or not, and if we start the discussion in the Jira ticket, it may distract him, whereas discussion in the PR keeps us right in the code.
Okay. So we could start the discussion there. And so another question I had was do we want to benchmark multiple operations, or are we looking for first, or should we first do the first two things and then move forward with other operations? How do we do that?
So it's a good question. I could imagine the double fetch thing will have places where it will be blocked, where you will be blocked waiting for me or waiting for Fran or somebody else or Justin to review something. Therefore, you may, in order to continue making progress, need to start another thing, right? You may need to start a JMH measurement of get ls remote, or a JMH measurement of let's see, what are some other sample operations? ls remote is the noteworthy one because it's a check for changes operation. But their checkout, for instance, might be one. Right. And where we say, okay, is there a substantial difference between JGet checkout and CLI get checkout? And if so, how should we handle that?
Okay. Sure. Okay.
And checkout has the benefit that it is 100% local. ls remote is intentionally designed to be 100% remote.
Okay, so I think this is done then. The second thing was Java flight recorder, the discussion we had with Oleg in the platform side. So I wanted to discuss if we want to profile data using Java Flight Recorder and how are we doing that? Because for me, I have tried Java Flight Recorder. It's integrated in the JVMs. I have a student license with IntelliJ, so and I think I can access the commercial version. So I tried JFR, and uh, though it was not very the thread dumps it gave, it was not very intuitive. I used a different profiling tool after that. I don't remember its name, but it gave me the percentage of the amount of CPU usage it is a particular operation or a particular thread is taking. With JFR, it was mostly flame graphs I had. I'm not sure that's something you're aware of, flame graphs. So it's basically a visual representation of how much space a thread is taking, and then the threads are stacked. I'll share a link for that. So when I was researching about JFR, what I saw was that we have JMC Java. I forgot the name. I actually forgot the name. Java Mission Control. Yeah, Java Mission Control, which basically takes the dump file of JFR, and it could be used to visualize the results in a better form. So my question, I'm sorry, my question here is that whatever profiling I did personally was just checking out using the Git SCM checkout feature. So my question is, I haven't used Git plugin uh, in a ways the users do. I think at least I have used it for certain use cases only. So what should we profile? Should you, Mark, or for any of the other mentors, or should we give it to other users as well? We ask them to profile their Jenkins instance with JFR, and I parallelly also do that. Should I learn? I think that it's an absolute it's a necessity for me to learn most of the major use cases of Git plugin, because I haven't given too much time on that. I'm a bit confused in that front. What should I do? How should we go about profiling
So
with GFR?
how about as a proposal, one technique we could use is have you on your local machine using Java 11, test drive running a Jenkins, just run the war file directly with Java 11 on your machine and experiment with Java Flight Recorder as bundled in Java 11. If that works well for you, it'll give you experience. It will let you see, this is how I use Flight Recorder. This is how I get useful information out of it. Just to do anything to get you familiar with it, because I am not familiar with it. I don't know about Justin or Fran, but for me, it would be a completely new exploration.
Okay, I could do that first. Yes, that's a good step.
Now we could
And GFR in Java 11.
Right, and just run Jenkins War, so no Docker images, nothing more than just launch it using Java 11 on your Mac and see if you can instrument Flight Recorder inside of it. Once you're comfortable with that, then it's okay, what data does this tell me? Which are the hotspots? Then, for instance, once you've seen some small sample, you might say, okay, now I'm going to try to clone mega horrible terrible repository. You pick it, the Linux kernel, or Jenkins.io that's 40 megabytes size. You pick a large repository and watch what JFR tells you about that case where you say, I know this is absolutely going to be catastrophic on everything will be spent on a command line Git operation. Then switch and do it with JGit, where now all of a sudden you're inside the JVM. It's no longer CLI Git hiding things. You're inside the JVM, and you'll probably now see hotspots inside JGit itself of, oh, look, this is hot, that is hot. Again, good experience to just iteratively decode what does JFR tell us, how can we use it.
I am writing it down and I do that. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that sounds good, and I think you also see like some weights when you're using the command line one and stuff like that. So
Okay,
So
yes.
Justin, when you say wait, you mean pauses, halts, where
Pauses,
something?
sorry. Yeah. Pauses.
Okay. I was just.
I think if I remember right, the profiling tools, I think they usually show like when you've got pauses and stuff like that.
Good.
Or
Okay.
I think they would show out like once you've shelled out, we'll kind of like tell you what threads are waiting and stuff. It's been a while, so that could be wrong.
Now, Rishab, I am confident we can enlist the help of others. If your initial experiments do not quickly show you, hey, this worked and this worked, there are lots of people who do have experience with profiling that we can enlist. Don't sabotage your progress just because something is getting in your way and you just can't figure it out. We're happy to go find people who have experience in this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, if you run into questions or problems and stuff like that, just kind of like take a note, and then we can get those out to the community. And
Sure. That's a good way to do it. Yeah, I do
or
that.
between us and the community.
Sure. Okay. So I'll do that with profiling. Okay.
Yeah, so, and I wanted to add one more, I'm going to add one more comment there just in case you have to refer back to it. So it is clone a large-ish repository repo with CLI git, review the traces, traces, clone jgit, review the traces.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah.
Now, in terms of the next one, the profiling data from willing users, I am happy to put you on my, what I would call nearly production scale Jenkins instance running on Java 11. I just have to grant you an SSH connection into my environment, and then you're welcome to use it. It's got 30 agents. It's running on a machine with 32 gig of RAM. It's on Java 11. It's got 1,000+ jobs. So after the initial learning period, after the initial let's do something on small things, if you really want something industrially large, I've got it.
I think that'll be a great thing to do. First, I should understand how to use it, and I'm able to analyze the thread dumps here first, and then I'll maybe would want to see what happens in production or near production at that scale. Yeah. Okay. So that'll be a great next step. So after that, so with running benchmarks on Jenkins CI agents, we were talking about using sub-modules. So the question I had was, what I thought was, you were saying that a sub-module is basically, it's like a pointer. It points to that repository we're adding as a sub-module. So I understand git submodule add will do that, but once I use git submodule I initialize it and I update it, after that it must bring all the files from that repository to my repository, right? So
that's correct.
How would that solve our problem? If I have a 300 MB sized repository, it still would make maybe git client plugin a very large repository, something we would not want to do, right?
Well,
or is it okay that I do it for this experiment for JMH? I do this.
Yeah. So maybe let's pull back just a little to the objective. You need repositories of interesting sizes that you can use for tests, and you need those locally, right? That's ultimately what we need. We need interesting sized repositories, and we need them locally, and we'd like to express inside the tests themselves how to get those large repositories locally.
Yes, exactly. That's the
objective. So in that case, I think you might choose in your JMH setup code, in your code that's doing the prep work before your JMH benchmarks start, just clone from the remote repository to a local cache directory, and then reference that local cache directory without any submodule, without adding anything to the plugin except the source code that describes what you're cloning. So what you have is an expensive operation initially, which says, clone this 40 megabyte repository or this 300 megabyte repository. Do that once, and then all operations in the measured portion use the local copy on the file system. So then you don't have to mess with submodules. You don't have, that's sort of the technique that the Git client plugin uses. It uses itself and clones the copy into a temporary directory locally so that it has a reference copy of something with interesting history in it.
Yes, I've actually seen that with the tests we have, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a
Okay.
good technique, but it is the technique it uses.
Okay, I was only concerned about this thing that we initially thought that we will not interact with. My thought was to isolate the JMH environment from internet or any possible external connection.
Mhm.
But I guess ideally, if the function, the method JMH provides, which is provided for us to do the prep work before running the benchmark, it should be isolated from the benchmark's measurement. So I think it should not be a problem to do what you're saying. And I think that's the easiest thing to do for me as well.
Well, and
So yeah,
there's Jenkins, the Jenkins Maven components, I think, have a concept where they use a directory named work inside the plugin development directory. So Maven
I've seen
HPI
that.
run, for instance, uses a work directory. I guess
Yes.
conceptually you could do something like that, where if the work directory exists, use it and use its contents directly. If you'd rather not do the setup, for me, it's easier to code the setup into your test and say, clone this repository. But it'd also be fine if you said, no, you need to already have this if you're going to run these tests.
Okay, but the work thing you're saying, it works when I run the Jenkins instance using Maven HPI run, right? And I'm actually, so would the user clone the sample repositories I want to test with? Because then I could reference that for my tests. That's something I would
Yeah,
have to specify first.
that was what I was thinking, but as you describe it, it sounds like that just won't work. I think it's much better to put the definition of how to do those clone operations inside the JMH setup code. Now,
Okay,
if
and
that
yeah,
disturbs the JMH tests, then that may not be acceptable. But I assume you'll figure that out. You'll decide, is that disturbing the test or not?
I think that's the first thing I would do. I would have the the implementation I have right now. I have the results, and then I would compare it with the new implementation we'll have. Okay, I'll do that first. I'll shortly raise a PR so we have something, at least a benchmark to test on infra.
Great. And now
Okay, yeah,
you had found that there was in the pipeline, the pipeline shared library, there was already something that invokes JMH. What's your
yes.
experience been with that? Did it work out okay for you, or haven't tried it yet?
I actually did not try because I knew it's going to fail because I don't have the repositories to
Hmm.
fetch from. So I did not try it.
Okay, thanks.
I will try it once I code this first, and then I'm going to raise a PR, and I think that's when it's going to. I'll also add run benchmark stage on Jenkins file, and then let's see what happens.
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, one more question I had was that how do we, so the sample repositories I took, what I had in my mind was that I want repositories, since we were talking about size of the repository and structure of the repository, so something where we could have the variability in the number of branches and the number of commits. So is that with what we should go? Because like what I took here, this is initially the first repository, it has one branch, one commit, and then it goes to a very large number. So is this the kind of variance we're looking for, right? So that we can sufficiently test our hypothesis that performance is affected by repository size and structure.
Yeah, at least for me, that was exactly what I was hoping for. Each of your rows is almost an order of magnitude 10x, so 10x larger than the next.
Yeah.
Each row is 10x greater than the one before it. So what you've done is very quickly broaden the search space to interesting things. The next row down, if we were ever to get to repo -5, probably Linux, right? I mean, it's okay. The next one down is a 1.4 gigabyte repository with this enormous number of branches, and I would guess probably, yeah, 100x the number of commits in your repo 4. The
Okay,
volume is
yeah.
frightening on that repository. So yeah, we should not do repo 5, but we have a place we could go if we needed to.
And also,
Yeah,
do
this is a
we
good place to
have,
start,
yeah.
I think.
Okay. Okay, Justin. And one more thing I had in my mind was, do we have the data, the user data on what is the average size of repository people use Git plugin with? We would never have that. Okay.
I don't. That would be a telemetry thing. I can
Okay.
I can tell you horror stories, and I'm sure every other mentor in the group here could tell you horror stories of repositories that were bloated and terribly much bigger than they should have been. But actual data, no. I mean, we could sample. If we sampled, we've got a good sample, right? We've got 1,000+ repositories in Jenkins CI. And if you want a sample, that sample will give you one sample which would say the repositories are this size on average. The reality is those things don't look anything like most corporate repositories. Those are small isolated components, and many corporate repositories are monsters that everybody uses a single repository. So we have data
Okay.
sources if you'd like them.
That's okay. It's just a question I had in my mind. So after that, I haven't tested JMH Visualizer plugin with the Git plugin. That's something I have to do. And I'll do that. And
Well,
another thing, yeah,
that would be a
definitely.
big help. That would be a big help if, as we get this onto ci.jenkins.io, having something that would visualize would help me a bunch if I ever need to look at things. So I think that's very
Okay.
worthwhile.
So I should do this as well with the PR for the benchmark, right?
At least for me, I would like that. I consider it optional, but it would be it's a real help. And again, I'm happy to put the JMH Visualizer plugin into my environment first if that will help you.
I think I can do that with the benchmark PR. Okay, so one more thing, one interesting thing I noticed when we were in the platform seg meeting, Oleg said that we want to target users with as you said that usually corporate users, they have big repositories, and those are the use cases that is where we should look for improving the performance, because we'll have marginal increase if we are able to improve the performance there. So I actually, Mark, I saw a presentation you gave on Git in large, something I think in Jenkins world. I just look at the presentation PPT. I didn't see the video. I couldn't find it actually. So I saw that you've gained some you gave there some suggestions for the users to do things like use reference repository, and for you bifurcated Git what Git plugin does on master and agents, and what we could do. The first was a reference repository using narrow ref specs, shallow clone containing the depth, and Git LFS. So I had this thought in my mind, an idea that could we provide some kind of when a user is configuring the Git plugin, could we provide any kind of suggestion at the time when the person is maybe for an example, we do validate if a person is entering a wrong URL, a repo URL. If it's wrong, we do validate it on the fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So could we do something like, for an example, we know that for repository size greater than this, we have seen that there is a 70% increase in performance if you narrow your ref spec. I assume that some people they don't add a ref spec at all. So by default we fetch everything, or every branch. If they don't honor the initial ref spec, they don't add any ref spec. So could we do something like suggesting them at that point that if you choose to add a narrower ref spec, you would save maybe this percentage. Maybe you would that it would be a boost in your performance. Could we possibly do that within keeping this fact in mind that we should not take a large amount of time in doing that? That's, I think, the biggest constraint, because we don't want a lot of validation going on at that point. The configuration is that something possible, or it's not something is it something ever considered in Jenkins environment for any plugin? Do we do that?
It certainly is possible. And I think the example you chose is a very interesting, specific example that could be quite helpful, because what we could envision the plugin doing is performing a git ls remote to list the number of branches and the SHA-1 of each of those branches on the remote. It's a relatively low-cost operation. Today, I think the way we check is we check to see if it's a Git repository at all. But if we made that a little heavier weight and asked for git ls
Yes.
remote, that would list all the branches. And we might, as a heuristic, say, the heuristic is if you have more than 10 branches, we should suggest narrow ref spec, because anybody with more than 10 branches probably will benefit from an intentionally narrowed ref spec. So I think your idea is a good one. I'll send you a link to the videos. We've got the videos on YouTube, and so I'll send you a link to those videos that you can watch them to think about other ways that we might apply the technique you're suggesting.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing you could do, since it does involve like checking out the repository, this could be something that you optionally include in the logs or something like that too, because it would already have a lot of that data, including like size data and maybe object data. But yeah, I like Mark's idea of and maybe there's a button you could push to, since it is a heavier operation, like maybe you could add a button to the configuration and say, give me performance things, and then it would invoke the thing, depending on how much time it took and how much performance you had on.
Yeah, I think Justin.
I love the idea.
Well, Justin's got a good point that the first time you configure a job is actually not as frequent as reconfiguring a job, which you may already have a cloned copy. So Justin's got a good point that you may at sometimes be configuring the plugin and we actually have a convenient local copy where we could check the size of the thing and say, hey, it used to be sometime in the past it was this big. We can assume that it's probably never going to get smaller. It will not shrink. Git repositories don't shrink. Therefore, we can make heuristics, offer suggestions based on if we found a local copy. And now if the local copy is not available, no suggestions. But there are a number of places where we might look for local copies and say, hey, we found a copy of something that looks like this. It's this size. Here's our recommendation for your performance.
Okay.
I mean, and even some people don't even, so we use job DSL quite a bit. And so we don't even touch the configuration screen. That just happens for us. And so like having an option to potentially have it in the build log or maybe on the admin screen or something like that would be cool too, or as an option potentially. Some people might not like that option. Get all kinds of crazy scenarios, but in general, I love the idea.
Okay. So I think I should research more on that and probably add it to our design document. That's something we would want to look at. Okay. So I guess this is it for today. This is what I have to discuss. Yes. That's from me, yeah.
All right, so official start of coding is 5 days away, right? So you're comfortable that you're ready to go?
Yeah, I think I am. And the first two things I think we have decided is a PR on the JMH model running on Jenkins CI and the Git double fetch performance issue. We'd open a discussion there, and I think we would start there. I think that's a. And should we start doing this on Jira? Is that something we need to do, or should we? I'm not sure if that's done in GSoC or not. Do we add tickets?
You are welcome to use Jira tickets if that will help you. Absolutely. I have no objections to that. It allows you to have a public place to show things and to say, hey, look, here's this ticket I'm working on. That's great.
And probably
Yeah.
put
Last year
timelines
we
on
did it in
the task.
Jira.
Yeah, Justin.
I was just gonna say, yeah, last year we did it in Jira. I guess if we get Parche on the next one, like maybe he can give you his experience from his perspective. But it worked pretty well in terms of communicating things. But I think it also, like, I think what Mark was referencing, let's do what will help you and help the general project. It's a way to engage with the community potentially, but I don't know that we had like a lot of outside community involvement other than potentially like people we had reached out to. So I guess my 2 cents on it.
Okay. Now, Rishab, we've got one more meeting before start of coding, right? We're scheduled for, I believe it's Friday.
Friday. Yeah.
Right.
Friday.
So you're okay. We'll plan to meet at that time.
Yes.
And that's right in the middle of the closing of the Hackfest. So I will drop out of the closing of the Hackfest. We'll do this meeting and then I'll rejoin the closing of the Hackfest.
Maybe we can, okay, if we can reschedule it if it's a problem for you. I don't have a problem with another time.
I think it is the correct focus to say Hackfest does not take priority over Google Summer of Code. Hackfest is wonderful, but we as a group can certainly meet together during that session. I don't think we need to change the time.
Okay, great then. Okay. I think that's it. Bye, guys.
All right. Thanks, Rishab.
Great.
See ya.
Bye.